It's my honor to introduce to you Alejandro García Padilla, the governor of Puerto Rico. The governor's been a frequent visitor in Washington for the last several months, and we're really honored that he's willing to come back to visit with us today. Governor Garcia Padilla is the only governor of Puerto Rico who was actually educated in Puerto Rico, the only governor who has resided in Puerto Rico his entire life. He has a law degree from the Inter-American University of Puerto Rico, and relevant to this audience, I've learned that his wife is actually a CPA, which may or may not explain Puerto Rico's fiscal situation. The governor is going to speak for about 15 minutes. I'm going to come back and do a brief Q&A with him, and then we'll open it up to all of you. For reporters who are in the room, after the governor is done here, there's a Summers room, where the security guards can show you where he'd be willing to continue the conversation with reporters if you don't get a chance to answer the questions on the stage. Thank you. Governor Padilla.
Thank you, David, and about being the first governor that studied and just grew up there in Puerto Rico. You will notice that in my English, so it is fitting to be here 10 years after the publication of Brookings collection of policy papers on Puerto Rico titled Restoring Growth. That continues to be the seminal question facing the Commonwealth. Puerto Rico has been in the news for many months. Its debt and the risk of a disorderly default with the outcomes it entails, including a humanitarian crisis in the island, has attracted the attention of the United States, the Hispanic community from Spain to Argentina, and the world. The financial minister of Germany, hosting a visit of Secretary Liu more than a year ago, and feeling the pressure put by Liu regarding Greece, said that he will trade him Greece for Puerto Rico. We cannot speak for Greece, but I thank Secretary Liu for his effort for us. I am sure you may have asked many times, how did this situation happen? Was it overlooked? Is it a surprise to Puerto Rico itself and to everybody else? You may be wondering what lesson we could all possibly learn from Puerto Rico and its leadership now that the island begins its path to financial restructuring as well as its recovery and growth. To discuss those questions, I kindly accept the invitation made by Brookings to come here today. It is a fact that Puerto Rico doesn't have the ability to repay the $70 billion debt that was generated by the island's past administration and their creditors. Debt must be restructured fairly for both the people of Puerto Rico and the bondholders. A fair solution to the problem is critical in order to bring back progress to the island. States and municipalities across the United States are dealing with some of the same issues Puerto Rico is facing. The need to maintain essential services for their citizens, along with shrinking budgets and reduced federal support. The need to renovate infrastructure, to provide health services, with its increasing cost to all sectors of the society, to fund public pensions, to secure a competitive education for all students, rich and poor, to fight crime and drug trafficking, and to bring security to neighborhoods, its streets, and homes. That said, not every jurisdiction dealing with debt started with the same scenario. Certainly, Puerto Rico's problem have no parallel. Puerto Rico's reality, which preceded the crisis, was unique. For instance, Puerto Rico's industrial base relied on Section 936 of the Internal Revenue Code, which incentivized U.S. companies to invest in Puerto Rico rather to go to Ireland or Singapore, or elsewhere in the world. It was a win-win for both for Puerto Rico, whose people could get good jobs, and the United States, which kept companies at home. Section 936 was Congress' reaction to Puerto Rico's 1970s recession due to the oil crisis. And it worked. Puerto Rico got out of recession back then. But Section 936 was repealed by Congress in 1996 with a 10-year phase-out period that ended in 2006. And companies decided to go to Ireland, to Singapore, and Puerto Rico lost thousands of industrial jobs. The effect of such an industrial construction was brushed under the rug. Industrial income, and this is key, industrial income was substituted by issuing debt. In December 2005, just 1 year before the end of the phase-out of Section 936, our debt was $37 billion. 6 years later, in December 2012, it was $70 billion. It nearly doubled. And in January 2013, 1 month later, I was sworn in. The official deficit, according to the government back then, as per documents, was 333 million. The reality that came out during the transition process was another one. The deficit was $2.2 billion. And public authorities' debts with the Government Development Bank was even worse, $4.3 billion. To tell you the truth, January 2013, I was about to ask for a vote recount. But the law in Puerto Rico does not allow the winner to request a recount. I was about to call my predecessor asking him to ask for a recount. The Volcker Alliance has noted that in facing these issues, states have become individual laboratories where innovative experiments are happening on many of these pressing issues. We address similar challenges, and we need to learn from each other what works, what does not, and why, about errors and achievements, about how to reduce the former and replicate the latter. In many ways, Puerto Rico's crisis simply suggests that because of its smaller and simpler economy, it is only ahead of the curve, a curve that looms to many other states and municipalities. We have been forced to try tools that have not been tried before. We have had to knock on doors that other jurisdictions may need to approach in a not too distant future. We assessed the magnitude of the crisis that was over us. Possible solutions were in the table, thus Puerto Rico could not rely on the same tools available for the states. My administration acted swiftly. Puerto Rico adopted strong austerity measures. The island's budget had been cut by billions during my term. Expenditures have been cut from $11.9 billion in 2012 to $9.1 billion today. We present to the legislature a value-added tax alternative that will have imposed a more equal taxation system, but ultimately the bill that passed raised the sales tax to the highest in the United States. The public payroll had been reduced dramatically through attrition. We have deferred other obligations. We have withheld tax refunds. Payables to suppliers have also been stretched to over $2 billion. The inability to pay our suppliers has resulted in the loss of commercial credit, and many services must now be paid on delivery. Without supplier credit, medication and public hospitals and air ambulance services to trauma centers were put in jeopardy. These emergency measures are unsustainable, harm our economy, reduce revenues, and diminish our capacity to repay our debts. Puerto Rico could not endure any more austerity. In order to generate a permanent fix to the debt crisis, and lacking the mechanism that New York and Detroit had, we responded creating our own restructuring statute. But federal courts closed that door. We tried negotiating a voluntary settlement with the creditors, but to no avail. We were pushed to the edge of the cliff. Puerto Rico municipalities and the island itself cannot declare bankruptcy. That's not a political statement. That's the law. The federal court decided that Puerto Rico cannot restructure its debt under a court-supervised plan similar to the Chapter 9 bankruptcy provide that U.S. cities like Detroit can access. Imagine New York case without federal bankruptcy available. Imagine Detroit without the federal courts. Puerto Rico was alone. Puerto Rico had no protection. Therefore, the crisis only aggravated through several years without Puerto Rico being able to act. On July 1st, 2016, 2 weeks ago, Puerto Rico was going to default on around $1 billion in general obligation bonds, the island's senior credit protected by a Constitution pledge on revenues. Creditors and bond insurers have initiated multiple lawsuits. Hedge funds filed an injunction before the Southern District of New York, claiming the, and I quote, absolute highest priority, end of quote, over government resources, including those needed to provide essential public services. That complaint states that in time of scarcity, bondholders should be paid before essential services. That is why we sought the support of Congress. Their response was Promesa. Promesa is a mixed bag. On one hand, it provides the tools needed to protect the people of Puerto Rico from disorderly collection actions. The immediate stay granted by the bill on all litigation is of the utmost importance at this moment. Moreover, the authority to adjust our debt provides the legal tools to complete the wholesome restructuring, fair to everyone, and begin Puerto Rico's rehabilitation. On the other hand, Promesa has its downside. It creates an oversight board that unnecessarily undercuts the democratic institution of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. But confronting the upside and the downside of the bill, it gave Puerto Rico no true choice at this point in time. So I needed to choose. Misery for my people or unnecessary intervention from the federal government with our democratic institutions. When someone points you with a weapon and asks you for your wallet, you may say no. But the consequences are worse than those of losing it. Now, it is time to regain the way to growth. Throughout this process, we have always made sure to keep the lights on, literally and figuratively. Austerity is a very difficult pill to swallow, but taking emergency measures early on worked. Crime rate is half of 2011. Unemployment rate have been driven down from 14.6 in 2012 to 11.7 right now. In a percentage base, of course. Now we are ready for the balanced approach that will stimulate the economy while paving a path to recovery. Now, our administration plans to use the tools provided by Promesa and prepare a fiscal plan that ensures we adequately fund our pension funds and returns us to a sustainable debt structure. These steps will protect our most vulnerable citizens and help ensure a return to economic sustainability. The challenges are not over, and prosperity won't return overnight, but our plans promise a bright future. As you all know, in order to focus exclusively, now you shows that, I'm the first governor that just stayed in Puerto Rico and not came to the state to college. As you all know, in order to focus exclusively on these crucial matters, I decided not to seek re-election. Therefore, I can say that I will use my remaining time in office, making use of the tools provided by Promesa to develop a fiscal plan that is faithful to the best interests of the people of Puerto Rico. At the end of the day, it was a crisis 2 decades in the making. It was not developed overnight, and it will not be fixed overnight. I ran and was elected with the hope of being a 2-term governor. But deciding to unveil the crisis, to show it to the world, and balancing the budget with no deficit financing took me to a different path. It was scary. It was very scary at the beginning. And we can choose to freeze when we are scared. We can choose just to take the easy way out. Or we can choose to fight, to pursue our goals. We can choose to decide to fight what we really want. I know we are on the right path to restructure our debt, recovery, and growth. Thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure to speak of lessons learned in the process. Thank you. David. It's great.
Bro, you've done this before.
Practice.
Yeah. Well, it'll be good in your next career.
Oh, yes. I don't know, maybe.
Saturday Night Live, maybe?
Could be. Jimmy Fallon?
Yeah.
I can.
I hear it pays well.
No, but I sing very bad. I cannot do what the president did with him. Orange is not the new black and stuff like that. I cannot do that. Not good rhythm.
Yeah. No, the president's unusual
great.
in that respect. I
Yes.
must say. So, if I were sitting here with you, Governor, as a young Puerto Rican man, say a 30-year-old man, educated, and I told you, I love Puerto Rico, my roots are here, but I really don't see a future for me here. I see decades of belt-tightening in the government, deterioration of public services. We won't even have control over our own destiny because we'll have this control board. I'm thinking of leaving for Nueva York or maybe Chicago. Would you tell me I'm making a mistake? And if you were trying to convince me to stay, what would you tell me?
Well, first, I will suggest not turn on CNN or or Fox or at least not choose Dallas or Minnesota right now. It's unfair with those jurisdictions that have great things and have been just through a crisis, and I'm empathic with them. But as New York is not what we know, or what is not occupied Wall Street, and Dallas is not the shootings. So Puerto Rico is not only the fiscal crisis. Right now in Puerto Rico per square mile is the best, is number one drug producers, pharma producers in the world. 7 out of the 10 more sales pharma products in the world are manufactured in Puerto Rico. 7 out of 10, including the number one, that is Humira. 12 out of the 20 more sales medical devices manufactured in the world are manufactured in Puerto Rico. So there's a lot of opportunities, but we need to fight this crisis out. And what will happen at the end of the road? Why I choose not to continue that? Can we go to the
Upward path of the debt.
the upper path of the debt? What happened in New York after the board? What happened what is happening in Detroit? What happened in DC? What happened here? So the change was, I remember the first time I came to DC, it was 1993, if I remember, when I was a student in the University of Puerto Rico, and there was just a few blocks out of the mall that it was safe to walk. But it's now different. So Puerto Rico will be different. Even though right now in Puerto Rico you have less crime than 4 years ago, less unemployment rate like 4 years ago. Yes, you're right. There's a diminishing in public services because we have an issue of liquidity and an issue of burden of debt. But that will be fixed. So it's now a moment of opportunities. It's precisely a moment of opportunity. I just want you to take a look at that graphic, because for the first time in history, debt is going down. And that do not include the restructuring of the power authority. So you will have to reduce 9 more billions to the last column. So it will be even lower very shortly. So where we're moving is where I think we should be moving.
So let's talk about where we are now. Promesa passed about 2 weeks ago. You put forward a fiscal plan. Are you going to radically change that, or how are you going to change it as part of the Promesa process?
The articles of Promesa that request the government of Puerto Rico to a new fiscal plan, or they say a fiscal plan, were based on the fiscal plan that we put out on I think if I remember, September or December of last year. So we comply already with most of the demands on the new law. But we are now working with that fiscal plan to amend it. It will be dramatic changes within the plan. So it will be areas where we'll be adding to the request that the government need to make to itself, but at the same time, softening in other areas. For example, I think that the government should be more efficient, and that needs to need a re-engineering of the government without firing public employees. I already present bills to reduce 24 agencies that haven't passed. We need to take a look at that again to include that in the fiscal plan. But the other side, we need to protect the University of Puerto Rico. The University of Puerto Rico is an investment. It's not a cost. It's not a burden. It's the principal engineering bilingual engineering center in the United States. NASA or Honeywell recruits more people, more engineers every year from the University of Puerto Rico than from any other university of the United States. So we need to protect the University of Puerto Rico as a real tool to our economic development. And that have to be protected in the fiscal plan.
So the fiscal plan will be same shape and size, or just reallocating some of
There
the
will be some changes in the size, but the huge change will be in it.
I see. And since Promesa passed, have you had any invitations from the creditors to sit down and start talking under the new arrangement?
Not directly, maybe through the government bank, but prior to Promesa, they approached directly to me, and I was able. I think it was July 22nd, 21st, that we were about to have a meeting in New York.
June 21st.
June, you're right. And they canceled. But I don't know why. I don't know if they were waiting to Promesa not to pass, so they will have more leverage after July 1st. But Promesa passed. And I think it was Marco Aurelio, the emperor, who says Concord have the right to know that they have been conquered. They lost, they lobby, they spend a lot in the Hill, they spend a lot on, some of them spend a lot on ads, lying about Puerto Rico, lying about me. Some of those are even I like it. You know, there was one full page, I think it was in Wall Street Journal, I don't remember, that it was Cristina Kirchner and I. You know, she was the president of Argentina. I was the governor of Puerto Rico. So you know, comparing me with Cristina Kirchner, you know, they have Messi and stuff like that. So I like that one. I do not like the Maduro one, but you know, fair.
You got to take the good with the bad.
The good and the bad.
So when you look at the fiscal situation in Puerto Rico.
So for them to know that they spend a lot and I laugh.
Yeah, good. Do you think Puerto Rico has reached the limit on what it can effectively raise in tax revenue? I mean, you pointed out, you proposed a VAT that was going to partly reduce the income tax. The legislature rejected it. You ended up with an 11% sales tax.
11.5, yes.
11.5% sales tax. Is this it for what the Puerto Rican economy can produce revenue, tax revenue?
Income tax goes against the productivity of the person. It's bad for the productivity of the person because you are penalizing someone because he produced. Value-added tax is where the rest of the world is moving on. During the 1960s, only 5 countries in the world have a value-added tax. Right now, 160 out of 190 countries in the world have the value-added tax. Of the 20 biggest economy in the world, 19 already moved to the value-added tax. Only the United States remains. So it will happen. And I think it's the right way to go, and I think that Puerto Rico should move. I think the United States should move into that direction. And it will happen. It's like legalization of marijuana. It will happen. Earlier, sooner.
I'm pretty sure both the legalization of marijuana and the value-added tax have been discussed on this stage, but never in the same sentence.
Welcome to Puerto Rico.
But is the level of tax, is this it? Have you squeezed all the revenue you can out of the Puerto Rican economy?
I think that we, well, in words of experts like Jack Lew or Ann Krieger, former economists of the IMF, International Monetary Fund, sometimes we went too far. So the austerity measures we cannot have the burden anymore. We need to make our economic growth. If not, we will enter in that debt spiral. Rising taxes today that will allow us to have more money today but less tomorrow. Then we will have to rise taxes even more next week because we get into that spiral. And I think we need to move out of that spiral.
And will your successor as governor run into political obstacles if he wants to reduce the size of the public sector more? I mean, you have fewer people, but you still have more teachers, you have more prisons.
Well, the discussion is changing now in Puerto Rico because everybody find out that we have an inefficient government that is not big on the number of employees, but of the size of the structure of the government that is inefficient. When I was sworn in, it was 105,000. It's right 89. It's right now 89, only through attrition. So what we need to do is to move those public workers where we need them. We have a lot of people in some agencies doing not that much, and we need them. For example, right now I have like 1,000 police officers doing administrative jobs in the police department. So we need, and we have been moving. We already moved 300 people from the Department of Education to the police department, so we were able to put more police men and women in the streets. So that's what we need to re-engineer the government.
Finally, before I turn to the audience, what are there savings realistically available from the pension system? You did the pension form of the ERS. You tried something with the teachers. The court said you couldn't do it. Is there more to come from the pension system, or is that?
It's something that amazed even Republicans in the Hill, is that we were able to change the main pension system in Puerto Rico from defined benefit to a defined contribution, including actual workers, which was the difficult task. I invest a lot of political capital on that because it was the right thing. Where's the problem right now? That is underfunded. Is 7 cents to dollar. So for each dollar that goes out, only 7 cents goes in. Because government haven't been able to put in their share in that account, into that account. So what we need is to fund the pension systems. Something that I didn't mention in my remarks is that when I was sworn in, the debt ratio to the budget was, and last month, was 36%. The state with the highest debt service ratio to budget is Hawaii with 13. So we have almost 3 times. The average in the States is 5%. The average in the world is 7%. So 36 is humongous. It's something that no one can handle. That's why I said more than a year ago that the debt is unsustainable, that we cannot pay, that we need to restructure.
Okay, we have a lot of people here. We'll take some questions. Natalie, I'll start with you here. And why, for the governor's sense, why don't benefit would you identify yourself? Lily, is that on?
Natalie Cohen with Wells Fargo Securities. Thank you very much for your presentation. There's a great deal of opposition to Promesa. The candidates running for governor have publicly opposed it. CNE came out and spoke against it. I don't have any idea what the man on the street is thinking. I'm thinking maybe there's a different perception. But could you look into the crystal ball a little bit and say perhaps how will this go forward without some kind of buy-in or support on the island?
I will try to do it in the same order that you pointed out. That's why I choose not to run. I understand them. There's a new federal law that go into too much into our democratic institutions. And I do not like that. But again, not thinking about November, but thinking about paving the way. And I say it as I feel it. It's like when someone points you with a gun and asks you for your wallet. I may say no. No, we will not surrender our democratic institutions. But then that will be misery to our people. creditors make a huge mistake with the injunction that they request from the Southern District of New York, the federal court, because they said that they said to the court that the governor were saying publicly that he will pay essential services prior to pay them. Hell yes. That's my job. So I went to Congress on the final days and said, you know what? This is what will happen. And if that judge grant that injunction, they will put an embargo. They will put they will apply the injunction to our treasury account. So I will not be able to provide essential services. And even though that they do not want to say it publicly, I have a feeling, I cannot talk by them, I cannot, speak for them, but the candidates know that. They have to deal with that. The candidate from my party, Dr. David Bernier, he already says, it's approved, we have to deal with it, let's work, let's make it happen, and let's make it last the least that is possible. So it's what I think that's the right approach. It's approved. Let's reduce our debt. What in the streets? The main newspaper recently presented a poll that shows 54-46 against it. So it's almost half and half. For me, I have three childs. When they grow up, Puerto Rico will have less debt than today. That's fulfilled myself.
On the aisle here, I know your last name, I don't know your first.
I'm Teresa Terminacian, formerly from the IMF. First of all, thank you very much for a heartfelt presentation. My question is, what will be the motors of growth for Puerto Rico going forward? The motors of growth.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Can you be a bit more specific? You have indicated something, but can you be a bit more specific? Because how can Puerto Rico cannot get out really of a debt spiral unless it starts to grow.
Yeah.
So what are going to be the actions, the policy actions the government can take? What can the international community do to help Puerto Rico regain growth?
Thank you. And I don't want to forget the last part of the question about the international community, because there's something that the international community can do. First, the two main approaches to their economic growth come from the administration here in the States and from Congress. The administration's approach goes to Medicare and Medicaid. That will allow Puerto Rico to have, I'm talking about parity. Medicare is obvious because we pay the same but receive less. That will allow Puerto Rico to have, if I remember well, 6 to 7 billion more a year. The Congress approach is more through economic incentives to corporations like 936. When I say like, it's not that much, is on that approach. I think we need both. And why it's so? We need to bring those companies back because we'll put into production the best part of us, that is our skilled workers. So if you ask Lufthansa why they have the only MRO of their own in the hemisphere in Puerto Rico, they will say skilled hand workers. If you ask Amgen what the biggest biopharma building in the world is in Juncos, Puerto Rico, by Amgen, they will say skilled hand workers. Second reason, taxes. But first one, skilled hand workers. And of course, our healthcare system is a priority, so we will have a lot of help with Medicare and Medicaid. So those are, I think, the main goals right now. About the international community. Recently, I went to the United Nations and demand from the United Nations to request the United States to comply what the United States addressed to the United Nations in 1953, when they, the United States, state that Puerto Rico achieved self-government enough not to be part of the list of territories that need decolonization. The bad side of Promesa that I point out mess with that. So the United States need to re-entry in that dialogue with the people of Puerto Rico so we can achieve again the autonomy level that allowed us not to be a colony. I think that is not where the United States wants to be, with the issue that the United States have with the rest of the world, to have a colony of their own.
Carrie, I have two different sets of times. Do we have time for another question, or are we okay? Okay. Nick?
Kate Long, thank you,
Wait, can we,
Governor.
for Nick Tamaros in the back?
Thanks, David. Nick Tamaros at the Wall Street Journal. Governor, I wonder if there are specific steps that you were unable to politically get through the legislature over the past 3.5 years that now, whether it's labor law or other kind of economic competitiveness steps addressing overcapacity in the public sector, that you would now ask the Oversight Board to implement with maybe with some of that political constraint being removed by the federal legislation?
Thank you, and I think it's a very good question, but I think that what will happen is we will be able to do it. Remember that Promesa or the board will have a say if we do not do it ourselves. So if we do not act in a responsible way, for example, people say, but Promesa will be, the board will be able to approve a budget. That's true only if we are not able to approve a balanced budget. So Promesa, the board will not, the oversight board will not deal with our budget if we do it the right way. As I pointed out before, we need to consolidate agencies in Puerto Rico, not to reduce public workers. I do not agree with reducing public workers more than what we have been able to do through attrition. But we need to make the government more efficient. We have, for example, what we call procuradurías. It's like ombudsmans, but we have the ombudsman. Then we have the procuraduría, the ombudsman, the ombudswoman for the women's, and for elders, and for sick people, pacientes. So my mother, she's a woman. She's sometimes sick. She don't want me to say it, but she's an elder. And she can go to the ombudsman too. So we propose create, like in the rest of the world is happening, create just one place. Doesn't pass. We need to do those. We need to do more. I think it was 2013, September or October 2013, if not, it was 2014, that I present when you guys were discussing here if the government need to rise the gas tax, we did it. So we are paying now the half for the gas in the pump, but we have more tax from it. But it was approved too, it delayed too much. So we weren't able to go to the market and took part of the debt from the Government Development Bank to add liquidity to the bank. Not to add more debt, but to add liquidity to the bank and renegotiate that debt. So we weren't able to do it because we delayed too much. Now we will need to be more efficient in the way we deal with those problems, to give you just two examples. And the budget need to be balanced always,
Steve?
not sometimes.
Lily, Steve, can you stand up so Lily can see you? And then there's a gentleman behind you whose hand I see, but I can't see who it is. So.
I'm curious about.
Could you identify yourself?
I'm sorry, Steve Winterstein with Wilmington Trust. I'm curious your perspective on the improved U.S. Relationship with Cuba and what's the effect on the island. And
I just visit them. I'm the first governor, sitting governor that visit Cuba. Cuba and Puerto Rico have a lot in common, not only because we are Caribbean islands. Our history is, you see the flags are the same, inverting the colors. They were both created in New York at the same time. And yes, and the Revolutionary Party of Cuba was founded for the independence of Cuba and Puerto Rico. Our civil code is the same. Of course, property law is a little bit different. But we have a lot in common. Cuba will be a formidable competitor, but it's not right now. And it will take a little bit for them to be. It will happen, and as governor, as Puerto Rican, as a Latino, it's something that cannot bother me. I'm happy for that. Good for them, and good for everybody. I think that if Cuba opens and there's more opportunities for Cubans, that's good. They will compete, we will compete. That's part of the game, and we will need to win, and they will try to do it. So let's make it happen. I'm happy. I'm very happy. I visit them. I'm planning to open an opportunities office there. Interest for doing business office in Havana, and already in conversation to do that. So it's something that is good, and I'm so glad that it's finally happening. And I will tell you, if you agree or disagree with the revolution in Cuba and with Castro's government, that's to decide. The embargo is bad no matter if you agree or disagree. It's bad if you agree with Cuba government because it's unfair. Why they cannot do business and commerce with whatever they want, and whichever they want to do commerce with them? Why the American people cannot do business with them? Because they are communist? Well, China are too, and I think that I don't know how many of the pieces that we are wearing here are made in China. Beginning with myself. But if you're against the Castros, against the revolution, then you are giving them the perfect reason for them to unite the people against the embargo. Against if there's a lack of anything, you can blame the embargo. So if you agree with them, it's unfair. If you want them to be changed, you are giving them reasons to stay. Dominicans are very good too.
Rich.
Richard Cicerone, Merit Research. Governor, this is a fiscal tragedy, and we're at a Municipal Finance Conference. I like the way you started off and said, where have we been? How do we get here? But that's also begging the question to take a look at where mistakes were made along the way. If we could fantasize and say we wanted to do time travel and go back in time and say, what would we do differently and when we would have done it? We might both agree about Section 936 shouldn't have been turned off when it was turned off because in the midst of the recession. But one of the things that I think has been a criticism in the municipal bond market, both within the market and players and also critics of the market, is that the market enabled the situation to happen. And I'm curious to say, would we all have been better off, you would have been better off, if the market would have, because the fundamentals were already out of line in 2006 in terms of debt levels, even then, but it went up and exploded. Would Puerto Rico have been better off and to go against the pleading that came from the government to buy the bonds, just not to have bought the bonds?
If I get, well, the question, if not, please go back. We go back in time, 1984, when Puerto Rico was removed from the bankruptcy code, or 1996, when the 936 was eliminated, and 2006, when we got into recession, but filled the gap on the reduction of wealth creation with loans. And the government of Puerto Rico knew it, but they decided to keep it hide from the people, just to make people not to feel. And the market knew it too. And Standard & Poor's knew it, and Moody's knew it, and Fitch, they knew it too. But Puerto Rico kept borrowing, and the market kept providing the money. So, and the debt was rising, and those numbers were public, and everybody said that the debt service ratio to budget was rising too, but no one said nothing. So it comes to the end. It's just happened. So it's an issue of responsibility on both sides. Let's say three-way: Congress and the United States, the market and the governments of Puerto Rico. I think that is a shared responsibility, and those numbers were public. It's nothing is hide there.
Okay, there's a woman in the back there.
Kate
I'm
Long.
sorry.
Hello, Governor. It's Kate
Hi,
Long,
nice to
Puerto
see you
Rico
again.
Clearing. Nice to see you. Two
Kate,
things.
for those of us who don't know you, who are you?
Kate Long of Puerto Rico Clearinghouse. I do research for bondholders. My first question is, the Puerto Rican legislature sent you H.R. 2959 to create a debt service fund in the fiscal 2017 budget of $450 million. Do you plan to sign that bill?
I arrived last night here and called back every 2 hours, let's say, and you just arrived from legislature, so I haven't read it. And now, as I don't know if here in the States is the same, we have 30 days since arrived. So I asked memorials, let's say memorandums from agencies, and decided what sign or veto. What happened with 2959? In Puerto Rico, the session ends on June 30, but the last day to approve bills on both houses, both chambers, the House and the Senate, is 5 days earlier, 25. And there were bills that weren't able to be approved by both chambers, even with amendments. So they are in conference. So what they did is that they put a lot of bills in that one. So they amend the 2959 to include other issues that weren't able to pass by June 25th. So it's a bill about a lot of things. That's why we need to study it before decided to sign it or to veto it.
The other thank you very much. The other question would be, in your term, you issued the largest junk municipal debt bond in the history of the United States, at the March 2014 GO. Could you see the problems that lie ahead, and the possibility that 15 months later you would say you need to default on that debt?
Well, things didn't came out as we were thinking that they will came out. It was funny because we did everything right, and credit agency, for example, says, that's what the line they use is like credit positive, but whatever, another reason. So sometimes they are Moody, sometimes they are Standard, sometimes they are poor, sometimes they are Fitchy, and so we did. You need to fix retirement funds. We did it. That credit positive, but we will downgrade you for another reason. So we went there and worked for that other reason, and we fixed it. That credit positive, but, and they kept it that way, so the market closed. And I was able to borrow at 12%. I was able to do it again and continue the path and to rise that 70 to 90. But I said, no, you know what? Not anymore. So I decided to go the other way. And if Kate is right, but things unveil after in the opposite way that we thought that will happen.
So do you wish you hadn't done that last borrowing?
I think that we will be, if with a crystal ball, as she said,
Right.
From Wells Fargo, right?
Right.
Knowing now what I knew, what I know, if I
Right.
can,
You knew now, which
maybe no.
maybe not. Okay. Well, please.
But knowing then what I know now.
Right, got it.
I would like to go to senior year in high school knowing what I know now.
We got the idea. Governor, thank you very much for your time and your candor and your sense of humor. I admire someone in a job like yours who still has a sense of humor. I hope you can keep it for the next 6 months.
Let me tell you, David, three and a half years ago, I had hair like his. Now I have like yours.
And pretty
Can
soon,
be worst.
You're going to be
Can be worse, can be
going to
worse.
be Peter Orr's next, right? Okay, I'm going to let the governor go. If reporters want to continue the conversation, it'll be in the Summers Room. And I'd like to invite the next panel up.
I just want to say, what I said about CNN and Fox, I have nothing against them. I see it every day. You know what? They do not say anything wrong about me. So I prefer it.
I see.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you very much. Very good.